Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne, for leading us in a prayer. We are also live on Facebook. So those who are on Facebook, kindly write in the comment section as well where you are joining us from and whether you're a member or an ambassador of Alive Black People. And also, as I mentioned earlier, today we have our co-founder, Mr. Christopher Mapondera, who is going to welcome us for this new year and give us a message to kick off start the year 2022. Let's welcome Mr. Mapondera as well in the chat section by just saying welcome co-founder Mr. Mapondera with a black fist. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you all. So after Mr. Mapondera, we're going to have our country speakers from different countries who are going to present on their reports on what transpired in their countries. Yes, I can see people are writing in the chat section that they can hear me. Yeah, so allow me to go on and have Mr. Mapondera to lead us with a welcome message as our co-founder. Yes, Mr. Mapondera, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now, sir. And I can also see you.
Okay. Well, let me say Happy New Year to everyone. It's a pleasure. Be with you again. I hope our renewal. It's a year that we are going to assess ourselves. It's a year that I think is going to mean quite a lot to us as an African people. My message today really is talking about planning the future. During the colonial times, we did not have the chance to plan our lives. You know, it was planned for us. The colonizers knew how long they're going to keep us down until we started rebelling and started, wars of liberation to free ourselves. Now, after we freed ourselves, we found that there were a lot of things that we could not do because we did not have much control of. But I'm glad to realize and to see that as an African people, we're now getting to the point where we are setting timelines for ourselves. There's an example. The AU has designated now in 2030, there should be some transfers for each country. You can look at any country, they all have plans of what they expect to achieve by 2030, which to me is a big, big stride in how we have lived as an African people. If you see how the Chinese are preparing for their transformation, they have sent millions of their kids to Western institutions because they are saying maybe in 20, 30 years' time, they want to be a so-called free market capitalist system, which is mixed up with some communist and socialist ideologies and so forth. But they could not transform themselves to that type of system until and unless they understand it. That is why you will find that at each and most American institutions, and I'm sure this is applying to Europe, where the Chinese have sent in their young people to go and understand how those institutions operate. But as an African people, we did not have the chance to create that type of strategy. And I'm hoping that the 2030 timeline that we have set will give us enough time to start planning. What is this generation going to be like in 2063, which is the timeline that the AU has set up for the total integration of Africa. But in order to achieve that, it means there are so many areas that we've got to start looking into. The Africa Free Trade area, the Africa Continental Free Trade area is one stride that has been taken to try and start integrating the African economies. As you all realize, that Africa is really becoming the world's supplier of raw materials, the world's supplier of human capital, the world's supplier of a market. Everyone is looking at the 600 million youth that we have in Africa that everyone wants to sell to. As you will also see that for our former colonizers, they are planning also, what is it going to be like in 2030? What is it going to be like 2050 or 2060, when the group of young Africans who did not experience colonialism, but are going through economic suppression, they are going through economic subjugation, where they are saying, no, we have to start creating our own African institutions. Start looking inward, how we can convert. So the 2022 to me becomes very significant, because I'm here in Zimbabwe right now and I can feel it, that people, young people are saying, hey, we want our future to change, and nobody else is going to change it but ourselves. When I look at various videos of what's going on in other parts of Africa and so forth, I can also feel, that the African youth, the African people are on the march for their own total liberation, but they are putting those timelines in place, that we want to have the industrialization of Africa. We want to have better communication in Africa, create highways, east to west, south, north, south, to Kigali, from South Africa to Cape Town, from Accra to Lagos. So you find that there are all these highway networks that are on the drawing board throughout Africa. And this is because Africa is saying we need to integrate more. And the other way to do it is through communication. We're already talking of the open skies for Africa. There's also quite active talk of having one African passport, so that you can be able to go from one African country to the other without having to worry about visa and so forth. So to me, 2022 marks the beginning of the transformation of Africa, or the continuation of the transformation of Africa. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you from time to time as to how are you planning your own future? Are you looking at yourself and say, okay, where will I be 20 years from now? Where will I be 10 years from now? Where will I be 5 years from now? And what are you going to do to contribute to the transformation of Africa? As I've always said, to be a Pan-Africanist is not just a theoretical aspiration, but it's something that we have the chance to actually implement it and go beyond being simply, intellectuals that can just talk about it. So really my message today is that I'm looking forward to 2022 as part of the transformation that is already taking place in Africa. and that each and every one of you can start thinking and looking at what am I going to contribute towards the transformation of Africa in 2025, in 2030, in 2060, what do we want Africa to be? And those seeds are planted by you, by me today. So that's what I have for you today. I'll be glad to take one or two questions. Otherwise, I felt real happy that I've been able to talk to you in 2022. Thank you so much, Howard. Okay, Howard, can you hear me? If there are any comments, I'll take some comments. Otherwise, I'm done. Any comments? I mean, if you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer any.
I can see there are no questions. If there's anyone who have a question, they can still raise their hand or they can write in the comment section so that they can ask our co-founder, Mr. Mapondera. All right, thank you so much, co-founder, Mr. Mapondera, for the message you gave us. I love Black people, family. We appreciate you say, and we would like you to proceed with us with the unifying of uniting Africa as one. We appreciate your time today on Saturday, and I can see you're in Zimbabwe. It was a bit sunny and rainfall, and also you're at the farm doing some great work there. We appreciate you, Sam. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a weekend.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We have listened to our co-founder, Mr. Mapondera. On next, we're going to have our country reports from different countries. Yes, you are going to have reports from different countries. I'm going to start with Mr. Lisulo Muhau from Zambia. Yes, Mr. Muhau, you can unmute yourself. I've unmuted you. You can just accept the unmute button. Hello, Mr. Muhau.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you able to get me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly and loud. You can continue and report your report. You have 1 minute to do that.
Thank you very much. Greetings to the one who gave us a speaker, Mr. Pondera. It was very nice. And to the presenter. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue. We appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Our report from Zambia, reporting directly from Lusaka, the capital city of Zambia. Our report is dated from 20th January 2021. Our report of activities ending as stated above or as mentioned are ongoing, and this time we stormed Lusaka, the capital city of Zambia, Kablonga area to be specific. People learned the importance of this movement and we encouraged many to join. We hope soon they will join the movement as many requested for the link. Most importantly, we advised them to help identify Black business owned according to our 8 essential categories. This is important as it helps boost the economic value of our brothers and sisters, both locally and in the diaspora. Our only request as a country, we request for the I Love Black movement t-shirts, if there are any, to help for easy identification of our members. COVID-19 statistics as at 21st/01/2021, confirmed cases 799, cumulative 2,099,971, tests 5,389, cumulative 3,136,269. Recoveries 2,633, cumulative 2,085, 133. Vaccinated dose 1, 7,245, cumulative 668,969. Fully vaccinated 14,855, cumulative 15,550. Death, COVID-19 associated, only 1, total 2, cumulative 3,879. Total active cases 10,955. Total currently admitted 150. Community management 10,809. New admissions 28. Those on oxygen 73, critical 23. Reported by Risuro Muhao, country spokesperson for Zambia. I am because we are. I thank you all.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Risuro Muhao from Zambia. We appreciate you. On next, we're going to have Elijah Nyabuti to present on behalf of our sister, Anna Karina from Mozambique. Elijah Nyabuti, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, there's a bit of noise at your background.
Okay, let me read the report from Anna Karina from Mozambique. The report is dated 17 January 2022.
Sorry, Elijah, we can't hear you. Let me just fix your background and also maybe your network. Whilst we're waiting for Elijah to fix his network, we're going to have Andrew Magombo to present a report on behalf of Billiard Williams. Yes, Andrew Magombo, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself. Yeah, yes, you can unmute yourself, Andrew. Yes, Andrew, you can unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue and present the report on behalf of our brother Billiard Williams from Malawi.
Okay, thank you and greetings to everyone. This is Andrew Magombo from Malawi. And here I have a report of week under review, a third quarter of January. And this is dated from 15th January 2022 to 21 January 2022. Summary of activities that transpired in this week are: on 15th January 2022, the community had an interactive class session with Nana Akua Zenzere and Dr. Terine Wright. On 16th January 2022, a call was made to all members and ambassadors to recommend their favorite Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses that can treat fellow Black communities with dignity and respect. On 17th January 2022, the community reminded all members and ambassadors to confirm their attendance to a Pan-African core meeting to be held on 22 January 2022. Members and ambassadors were encouraged to invite friends and family members to join the call to the Black community in treated well where they may go. On 18th January 2022, the community had a regular weekly newsletter, which highlights on our 8 essential categories, which is education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodation. On 20th January 2022, the community asked all members and ambassadors to follow our co-founder, Mr. Sinclair Skinner, on Twitter Space Meeting. And the topic was Pan-Africans, how do we protect each other from racism and xenophobia? On 20th January 2022, members and ambassadors were asked to prepare and submit weekly reports. COVID-19 update as on 21 January 2022. Cumulative confirmed cases are 83,565, whereby 170 were new. Total recoveries were 66,877, whereas 189 were just new. Total tests conducted so far, 519,726. Total deaths, 2,507. Vaccination, first dose AstraZeneca, amounting up to 1,098,898. Second dose of AstraZeneca, 399,078. JJ, 366,545, whereas 2,179 were new. First dose Pfizer, 2,676 were new. Second dose 4. Total fully vaccinated so far, amounting up to 765,623, whereas 2,117 were just new. This report was compiled by Billiard Williams Kalumba and has been reported by Andrew Magombo from Malawi. I am because we are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Andrew Magombo, for representing Malawi on behalf of Brother Billiard Williams Kalumba. We appreciate you. On next, we're going to have Elijah Nyabuti. Let us see if his network is now up. Yes, Brother Nyabuti, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you can go on and present the report on behalf of our sister Anna Karina from Mozambique. You have 1 minute to do so.
Yeah. The Mozambique report dated 17 January 2022 to 22nd January 2022. So in Mozambique, weekly activities to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia were in the group. The weekly newsletter was shared and members were encouraged to write and submit the articles. Members were encouraged to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. The COVID-19 update in Mozambique, as from 21st January 2022, tested positive were 221,975. Tested negative were 978,273. The cumulative fatalities were 2,149. The recoveries were 189,303. On behalf of Anna Karina from Mozambique, I'm Elijah Nyabuti, because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you, Brother Elijah Nyabuti. Before you go, I need you to present the last report which you compiled for Kenya.
Okay, this is the Kenya report, which is dated 15 January 2022 to 21st January 2022. the weekly activities in Kenya. On Saturday, we had the interactive class session with Nana Akua Senzel and Dr. Tyrene. In our group, members were encouraged to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. The regular weekly newsletter was shared, which highlights on our 8 essential categories. Members were also reminded to submit their articles for publication. Social media accounts were shared to the group and members were encouraged to follow, like, comment. And on Friday, members and ambassadors, also the country spokesperson were encouraged to prepare and submit their weekly reports. The COVID-19 update in Kenya as from 17 January 2022, the cumulative fatalities were 5,353. Cumulative tests were 2,915,257. Total recoveries were 249,192. Cumulative confirmed cases were 260,166. I am Elijah Nyabuti from Kenya. I am because we are.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Brother Elijah Nyabuti, for presenting your report. And also, on behalf of our sister Anna Karina from Mozambique. On next, I'm going to present the report on behalf of Uganda. Unfortunately, our brother Paul Joshua joined us but left early because of network. Yeah, Uganda's weekly report dated 15th January 2022 from 21st January 2022. Activities. On Saturday, we had interactive class sessions with Nana Akua Nsenzele and Dr. Tyrene Wright. Members were encouraged to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. Regular weekly newsletters were shared, which highlights on our 8 essential categories, which are education, health, legal, finance, transportation, beauty, food, and accommodations. Members were also reminded to submit their articles for publication. Social media accounts was shared to group and members were encouraged to follow, like, share, and comment in all platforms. Members and ambassadors were encouraged to always attend our online Zoom, which aims to build a global network to help and protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. COVID-19 update in Uganda on 21st January 2022. Cumulative confirmed cases are 159,000. Total recoveries 280,199. Total deaths are 3,449. Cumulative tests are 3,136,817. Report compiled by Sebusolo Paul Joshua. I am because we are. Thank you so much. This was the report which was compiled by our brother Paul Joshua from Uganda. Thank you so much. I can see Brother Joshua joined us, but unfortunately he had challenges with his network. So I just read on behalf of you, brother. Thank you for taking your time and compile the weekly report. I appreciate you so much. So everyone, I'm encouraging you to invite your friends and family. We are currently 37 on this meeting, whilst we are more than 100 active members on social media. We have access to internet. Yeah, so on next, we're going to have Nana Akua for today's meeting on healthcare class. Yes, Nana Akua, can you hear me? Yes, you can unmute yourself, Nana Akua. Yes, Anakwa, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you now.
I had not unmuted myself yet. Hold on.
Okay.
I'm still getting situated.
Yes, welcome to the OK class. You can continue. Yes, we can see you now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How is everyone? Thanks for joining us. So let's see, today we are on the third week, I believe. I have not taken the time to pull up the lesson. So this week is, we're talking about effective methods of handling stress. This is our third week of this series. So let me see if I can pull up our handout. And hopefully those of you in the class received this packet earlier in the week, maybe Monday or Tuesday. I've been trying to send the entire packet earlier in the week and then find additional information to try to send throughout the additional days. So I used to separate it, but the scan was not as clear. So the packet that I have that I send at the top of the week has everything in it. If you can allow me to share, I think I have pulled up the.
Yes, sir, you can share your screen.
Oh, it's still saying disabled.
Okay. What about now? You can share now.
Yes.
All right.
And we have it. Okay, great. Hopefully you can see the screen there.
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Very good. Now let me just scroll down and see. Okay, I see no faces today, just a bunch of black boxes. But thank you all for joining us just the same. Okay, hey. I see, oh, hey, I see, hey, Yvonne, and Modesta, I don't want to mess up sister's name. Oh, yeah, and D-Jack, and let me see. Uh-oh. Joel. Modesta, I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I saw her there. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you all. Hello, hello, greetings. Okay, oh, Deborah. Okay. I see the sister, it doesn't say the name, it's just she's on the iPhone. Thank you all. I'm just scrolling through. Joseph, Edith, wonderful. Awesome, awesome. Thank you all. Thank you for indulging me. I love to see beautiful Black faces, but I know you might be doing other things and don't want to be seen, but thank you for showing it. If you want to turn it off, that'll be great. I appreciate you. So yes, today we are talking about how to handle stress. And I had the idea earlier while I was doing an appointment that I wanted to add a different component today. I don't know if I've mentioned it before of any of you who have been part of the class, but I collect crystals. That's one of my interests, one of my hobbies. And I realized that in the information, I had not included anything on the healing powers of crystals. It's so much information. I tell you, usually try to compile information that I have handouts on already, or have kind of printed, typed up information that I can kind of share. And I have fallen short with some information. So know that what we discuss, I try to give sort of a good frame of reference so that you'll kind of know about holistic healing and health and wellness, and at least have a good working knowledge about some things. But I just realized as I got a new crystal that I ordered, it took months, but I finally got this crystal that I had ordered. It came in the mail yesterday. And it just reminded me that we've not discussed crystals. So we're going to talk about ways of handling stress. And I think I want to I want to highlight some crystals that are used for managing stress, for relieving tension, for dealing with anxiety, things that just promote relaxation. What I work to do is find sort of a handout that can be added to the lesson packet. And so now the other thought I have now is the book that we're working on. I didn't add that in the book either. So now I'm just having all these regrets. And I know Yvonne is sitting over there going, please don't add one more thing to this book. Yvonne has indulged me in adding health information to our next Global Green Book, right? That we, I won't add anything, Yvonne. Where you at? Let me see your face. I know she over there like, please don't add that one more thing. I know you're sending off messages. You're probably doing something else. But so yeah, I'm gonna try not to add anything. We'll save that for the next book. But we are gonna add that today. So we know that there are physical components to managing our health, different conditions and diseases. We know that there are different herbs and homeopathic remedies and essential oils and things to address our physical conditions. But what we're going to talk about today is ways to handle our emotional and our mental health. So we'll talk about stress and some ways to handle it. And we'll talk about emotional balancing, different emotions that we may experience and how we can address those as well. So let's just get into, and I usually will ask for people to maybe list some things that they do to manage stress. If you can indulge me, I'd appreciate that. If you will maybe list some things that you've tried in the past, or maybe things that you're considering trying to manage your stress, or suggestions you have, or things you've heard, even if you've not utilized them before. But please type that in the comments. I love some kind of interaction. That would be wonderful. And while you're doing that, because I'm confident that you're going to participate, right? Let's talk about what stress is and some common symptoms. Okay, so stress is basically a state of physical or mental tension, or something that induces it, right? It's a pressure or a strain that tends to distort a body. And in this regard, of course, this definition allows for putting stress on the body if it's, distorted or strained or pressure applied to it. We're putting stress or pressure on the arm or the leg. But if we also talk about the mental body or the emotional body or state, right, we know that that is emotional stress or strain or pressure that is applied. And it could be from whatever daily stressors that we have that I know you all are adding into the comment box, right? But let's talk about some common symptoms of stress. Okay, because in order for us to address these issues, we have to recognize the symptoms. And sometimes these symptoms could apply to other conditions, but we have to know that this also could simply be stress. So depression could be a symptom of stress, difficulty falling asleep, extreme tiredness or fatigue, feelings of anger or resentment, frequent absences from work or other obligations, impatience, inability to concentrate, loss of pleasure in life, increase or decrease in appetite, muscular aches for no apparent reason, stomach or intestinal disturbances, sweaty palms, tension headaches, performance anxiety, and I'm sure there could be others, but these are some symptoms or signs of stress. And sometimes we may discount it as other things. You may feel achy or tired and just say, oh, I didn't get enough rest, or oh, I stood up a lot, or I walked a lot today, or you may have pain in a particular part of the body and think that, oh, maybe I slept on it wrong, or, my neck is having a lot of tension and stress, or, it's some way that I didn't rest well. For a lot of these symptoms, it could be another explanation, but it may very well be that you are stressed. So let's see. Okay, some people are right. Okay, prayer is a good way of handling stress. Now, the sleeping a lot. Do you sleep a lot when you are stressed, or that's how you handle it? Now, I will say, and I'm saying that could be both, but yes, sometimes, and I remember, I wish I could sleep a lot right now. But there was definitely a time in my past where if I was really feeling stressed, I would just go to sleep. I would take a nap. Going to the gym. Okay, right after the call, you're going to the gym. Okay, excellent. Okay, and if you need the documents, I'll put my email in if you're not in the WhatsApp group. Okay, so I think the previous comments are for prior to me logging in. Okay, so yes, those are all ways of handling stress. Hopefully, if you're getting rest or you're doing extra sleep, hopefully that is rejuvenating your mind and your body and your spirit so that you can handle things better. But sometimes that can be a sign of depression. Sometimes people sleep a lot when they're depressed, but hopefully in terms of an effective means of handling stress, that is allowing you to recuperate and kind of rebuild and regenerate. So I would just kind of keep an eye on that, so that you're not hoping that you're sleeping the problem away, because of course, those stressors will still be there. But yes, getting extra rest can be helpful. But yes, working out, all sorts of things. So let's talk about some things I have listed here. Some people will exercise, right? Going to the gym. Exercise tension away. Join a health club or fitness club. Do stuff online or virtual Zumba classes or what have you. Aerobics, yoga, any kind of fitness routine. Nowadays, everything is virtual, so certainly in your home you can do it. But if you're still going out to, say, a health club, that's an option. If you're in a climate where the weather permits and you can walk outside in nature, I always advocate that. I think that's a wonderful way of exercising tension away. And another option is learning to deal with negative people. Unfortunately, we always have to okay, got a message, an alarming message. My apologies. So learning to deal with negative people. Yes, we're always going to encounter folk that are maybe less than positive and really drain our energy, really add stress to our lives, things of that nature. It's important to learn how to handle those types of people, whether you have a mechanism of kind of tuning them out, or whether you employ some conflict resolution strategies in terms of focusing on a win-win situation where you hear the person out and maybe be able to pull out whatever's useful in what's being said and maybe discard the negativity. implement some good communication, again, where you're able to kind of focus on what's useful in what's being said, or also how to set boundaries. Sometimes people are not worth dealing with or giving your energy to. So just figuring out how it is you have to or can deal with someone that is negative and is perhaps causing you some kind of stress or strain. And then again, setting those boundaries, putting those practices into place so that you are not causing more of a situation for you, because likely that person is going on about their business, they don't care, or maybe don't realize that they have caused you some sort of stress or strain. And you're stuck with it and it's in your face and you're dealing with it and it's affected your energy and they've continued on as usual. So learning how to deal with negative people is important. Join a community, social, recreational, club, organization, volunteer with some sort of group, something to utilize your time. These are good ways of handling stress. Getting involved, having more effective uses of your time. Also, you can express yourself, talk to someone, write something down, video record something, any way to get the feelings out, to express it. You may draw, you may build things. So we're all kind of different. Some people are very visual, some people are very auditory, or some people are very hands-on. So whatever it is that can allow you to kind of release, your feelings, your energy, kind of loosen you up, you should implement those things. You may also want to reassess or change your lifestyle. Some patterns or routines that we're into may be causing stress and you're not realizing. So a lot of times we have to do reassessments. We have to figure out, is my schedule that I go through every day working for me? Is this allowing enough time for me to do what I need to do and then the things that I want to do? Am I really involved in myself in activities that I really enjoy, that bring me pleasure, that make me smile and laugh? What are my patterns? Do I typically, I'm out and about in the spring and summer, but I'm just inside in the winter? Does that work for me? Some people have what's called seasonal affective disorder. So and because of the weather here, at least on this side of the world, right? When it's wintertime here in North America, we are usually inside more, right? And for some people, that doesn't suit them well. And so you have to then learn, okay, I always kind of feel sad, or I always kind of get a little gloomy when it's cold outside. And, the sun, the days are shorter and the sun is not out as long. So you may have to change your pattern or your routine for the different seasons or the different times of the year so that you can do some things to account for that change in the seasons. Very much so, being in tune with nature is important to our daily lives. So we have to sometimes make those adjustments. So devise a new plan or new routine if necessary. You may also choose to practice your spiritual beliefs. Tap into that inner power that we all have. We all have an innate power to heal, as we've talked about previously. Well, in this regard, we have an innate power or ability to rejuvenate ourselves, to relieve ourselves, to release tension and stress. So tap into that power. Pray and meditate on doing different things that will allow us to heal our bodies. And not that I'm prepared right at this moment, but this just seemed like an excellent time to talk about ways in which to do that. Crystals are an excellent way to do that, because sometimes some phrases we use sound a little spooky and a little tap into your power. And Iyanla Vanzant wrote a book with a similar name, Tap into your power. I'm forgetting, I'm butchering the name. I believe it was her first book. But what does that mean, right? So a lot of times we need guidance as to how to tap into that power. Definitely we can pray, we can meditate, but also you may decide to use other earthly items such as crystals to assist in that process. All right. And of course, I pulled this up on my tablet earlier, and now, of course, my tablet is not in front of me. How ill prepared am I, right? But if you Googled, for example, crystals that relieve stress or crystals that relieve anxiety, things of that nature, you'll come across different crystals. Crystals like amethyst that are used to help one meditate or tap into their intuition and align with spirit. Angelite is another crystal, and I'm talking off my head because I don't feel like fumbling trying to Google anything, right? So what I can bring forth right now, that's what you're gonna get. Angelite is another crystal. Amethyst is this really beautiful purple colored crystal, right? Angelite is this really pretty kind of sky blue kind of crystal, and they usually say that it helps you or assists you in talking to angels, or we'll say spirits, but it basically helps you to elevate yourself and align with spiritual beings, or some people interpret that as intuition, right? And it helps to kind of guide you. But in terms of doing those things, of course, you're relaxed. You know, it helps to kind of elevate you, right? It helps you to move from just the physical things, right? What we can touch and see and what we're doing from day to day. It kind of helps align you with our innermost spirit. Another crystal that I really like is, there's so many. Sodalite is coming to mind, another blue crystal, but it's more like a denim blue or darker blue, and it kind of has mixed white and blue colors in it. But that can be really helpful with mental health issues and balancing the mind and spirit and things of that nature. Aventurine is like a pale green color. Yeah, I'll say, so not like a forest green, but a lighter green color. And that one is also really good for people who are struggling with some mental health issues and balancing the emotions and things of that nature. So there are many crystals, and these are just sort of ones that kind of come to mind. And if I get a second, I'll pull up some other ones. But crystals, we know, are formations from the earth, right? And they're natural occurring. Some people just call them rocks. Some people call them gemstones. Some people call them crystals. Generally, when we are using them for healing, and we're using them in jewelry, we'll refer to them as crystals or gemstones. But these are natural rocks or crystals or stones that come from the earth, but they all have different energies and healing powers within them. And so I suggest you sit them by your bed, or some people even put them under their pillows. Some people will hold them in their hands while they meditate. Some people will place them, if you lay flat, some people will place them at the different chakra points, right, on the body. There are many different ways to use it. I just love the way they look. So I've used them in every capacity. I have some that are just sitting in my on my chest in my room. Well, I actually have several places in my room because I collected crystals for years, and I had bought this case for some of the smaller ones, and then I have these shelves for some of the other ones. But then I felt like, oh, I'm doing it too much, just like this is a museum. Let me put some, depending on how I'm feeling, by my bed, or let me put some in the bed with me or under the pillow, or let me hold some while I'm just sort of laying and meditating. Actively using these crystals and really pulling from and drawing the power that they naturally have can be really helpful and really healing. So these are things that you can do if sort of the concept of practicing your spiritual beliefs or tapping into your inner power sounds a little too unattainable or confusing. There are things that, for those of us that are just people who have to kind of touch and feel and know kind of what exactly we're doing, and we need help in doing it, crystals are one option for doing that. And another option for managing stress, nurture and pamper yourself. You know, you're your star player, right? You have to take care of yourself. So doing things that you enjoy, doing self-care and pampering rituals are always an excellent option. Even if it seems like it's just something that's having a physical effect, we know that it can have a mental effect as well. So if it is, for men, getting your haircut, you maybe would have the barber do a scalp massage. Or if you're getting your beard maintained, rather than just getting the shape up, then have them do a beard treatment. Or if you have locks or what have you, have whatever extra service that can be incorporated in that will allow for further relaxation. Implement those things. If it is getting your nails done, if you're a woman who gets your nails or your feet done, sometimes people think that that's merely for looks. Sometimes we just want to go and soak our hands or our feet, right? And have someone kind of tend to us. So of course we're doing it sometimes for the appearance, but also that process is very healing and soothing and relaxing. Getting a massage is very, very healing. And it's not just for people who have a physical aches or pains or some kind of physical condition where they need a massage. You can simply get a massage just to kind of move that energy, especially any stagnant energy, any soreness, knots that have accumulated because of stress in the shoulders or the back. Getting physical therapies like massage, and there are so many different types of massage. These are really good healing ways to nurture and pamper yourself. The relaxation exercises I will not go through, but just know there's some that are very simple as clenching your jaw and then releasing it. That can kind of help loosen up any tension you may have in your face and your jaw. You know, maybe just lifting your shoulders and tensing them up for a minute while you inhale, and then letting them down as you exhale. Very simple steps that you can do in terms of these relaxation exercises that can really help with increasing your relaxation. So moving down to the next page, this handout talks about just sort of how stress affects the physical body. So know that there are different glands that are in charge of the signals they send are to release stress hormones and to relieve stress in the body. So we know that this is a very physiological condition. So we know that it's not just in our minds, it's not just how we feel emotionally. There is definitely also a physical component. So we know that we have to get proper rest, we have to eat well, because all of these things will affect how our glands are functioning. A lot of people who are very high energy, who have a lot that's going on, multiple jobs or different things that they're involved in, will oftentimes get what's called adrenal burnout. And that's basically where you're not getting enough sleep or you're overstressed to where the body is just not able to produce enough hormones and send the right signals for your body to handle the stress that you're putting on it. And we know that there is physical stress and emotional stress. So sometimes people will feel like, well, I'm not stressed, I'm good, everything is fine, I don't feel stressed. But sometimes you may have these, some of the more emotional or mental symptoms that we listed earlier, but sometimes there are physical symptoms of stress. So let me just reiterate that. And know that many health conditions are brought on or exacerbated by stress. So even things that have a very mechanical, physiological root, we know that stress can still bring it on as well. Hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. So even though these have very mechanical causes, we know that things like stress can also worsen these conditions or these illnesses as well. So know that there is both that physical and that emotional component. So the next handout talks about other ways of relieving stress. We know that there are many what we call nervine or sedative herbs that relieve stress in the mind and body. So this handout gives a couple of recipes for a relaxing medicinal tea blend. They use hawthorn blossoms, St. John's wort, hops, lavender, and there are many others. We have a section where we are going to talk about teas or herbs that are used for relaxation, but this handout points out a couple of those. We know that there are certain foods that you can eat to help relieve stress. Nuts are usually really good. They're considered foods that help soothe the nerves, and it's mainly because of the minerals that it contains, mainly like magnesium, even sometimes calcium, B vitamins, things of that nature. These are vitamins and minerals that are known to kind of soothe and heal the nervous system as well as the cardiovascular system. So if you are a snacker and you know that you may be experiencing some stress, a handful of nuts would probably do you really good. Another thing that, and yawning usually gets a bad rap, because usually, right, when we see somebody yawn, we're like, oh, don't do that, don't yawn, because now you're gonna make me yawn, right? And you just think of it in terms of, oh, now I'm gonna be tired, or now I'm sleepy, or now you're making me sleepy. But yawning releases tension. So we've always just thought of it as that's a sign of fatigue. But of course, sometimes we yawn as we wake up, we yawn as we kind of move about and different things. So of course it can be an indicator of being tired, but also can help to relieve stress. So they say that you should, you know, yawn big and loud and stretch your arms and just really get into the yawn so that you can relieve some stress and tension from the body. So I thought that that was very interesting. So I definitely, mainly for that reason, and about the nuts, that I add this handout here. It also gives you a stress test, you know, things that you can figure out, especially the folk who tend to say, oh, I'm not stressed, or I never get stressed, or what have you. Sometimes there are other indicators that you just, again, would not associate with stress. You may feel irritated, or you may feel hurried, or like you always have so much to do. You may have trouble concentrating. You may have a hard time listening to others. You may have trouble getting pleasure out of things that you know, used to get pleasure from. You may find that you can't rest. Your mind is always going. And again, these are signs, you know, sometimes people will just attribute to other things. Oh, I'm just busy, or there's just a lot going on, or oh, I'm just around some people that just don't do their jobs, or we might discount it, and all those may be true, but still how it is impacting you is still creating stress and causing stress. So we have to sit back and notice the signs, and then we have to address them. We have to do something to relieve the stress, because even if you're still able to function day to day, because that's usually how people gauge these things. They figure, well, I'm okay because I'm still going on. I haven't broken my routine. I haven't stopped doing things that I need to do. I still go to work every day, or okay, I still get up and feed these kids every day, right? People just associate it with, am I still able to function? But that is not a good indicator of whether you're managing your stress well, because then what will happen is the body feels that stress and takes on that stress, and then it will manifest into a condition such as heart disease or high blood pressure, or any number of things. It could be something that's muscular. It may manifest into arthritis or gout, or some of these other things that you think have nothing to do with stress, but have very, very, very much to do with stress. Okay, so massage is always good. I mentioned that before. This handout just talks about some things that you could do yourself. And of course, if you have a partner or someone who can assist with that, great. But there are many, many self-massage techniques that we can do to just bring relief to ourselves. I'm a big proponent of the feet There's another handout that talks specifically about self-reflexology, or maybe just talks about reflexology, but I always do self-reflexology every night. But shoulders, lower back, these are neck, these are places that we can easily get to ourselves. Or even if you have a sibling or a child, or a friend, someone who can maybe help to hit some of these spots sometimes. Touch is very important. Touch is very, very important. I cannot say that enough. And let me just say that. I was speaking to someone yesterday who I guess is probably sort of a person who kind of isolates themselves, right? Not very sociable person, kind of stays to themselves, and was sharing a story of how they had not been touched. Like, so just a friendly someone, I think a coworker or whatever, had come and just in seeing them, hadn't seen them in a year or two or whatever, gave them a hug. And he said he realized that he had not been hugged or touched and he didn't really put a time, but he was like, he couldn't remember the last time that he had been touched, right? So I found that to be really sad, right? But it didn't seem to bother him consciously, right? Maybe subconsciously, but it didn't bother him consciously. But it just reminded me that so many of us do not have that benefit or that joy or that pleasure of being able to touch another human being. And it's not to say, oh, we all have to be in relationships or we all have to have that. But what I'm saying is, if there is an opportunity to be in physical contact, that's as safe as you can do it these days. If there is a means in which to be in physical contact with someone, I highly encourage that. But if we are not or cannot at this point, whether it's because of COVID or whether it's because we're not in a relationship or there is no one that you want to do that, then we can always do these self-massage or these techniques that we can do ourselves. Do attentional touching of different parts of our own bodies. So I'm always about empowering ourselves. So I'm never a person that's like, oh, well, I hate that you don't have anybody to hug on or to touch you or to massage you, but you have yourself. And a lot of times we live in this body, we don't think much of it. We don't, other than maybe jumping in the shower and washing it off. We're not thinking much about this body. We're putting food into it and we're feeding it, but we still maybe don't put as much time and attention and care into this body as we should, right? And so I'm saying, if you have someone to touch you, to do these massage techniques, wonderful. But if you don't, do them for and on yourself. Touch your feet, touch your legs. And I always incorporate it with, grooming. I think it's just an easy way to do it. For people who feel like I don't have time for this, you would do it anyway. So after you shower, while you thinking you're just putting on your shea butter or your lotion or what have you, no, take time to really massage your body and do, some of these techniques that will help increase circulation, improve blood flow and oxygen in the body. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself. I love myself. I feel good. I love every part of me. This can be really helpful for releasing tension, but also just incorporating some self-love and some self-care. So I highly recommend that. If you're able to have physical contact with someone, great. But if not, you can have physical contact with yourself. Hug yourself. Massage yourself. The handout here talks about reflexology. So these are different test points or reflex zones that are on the hands and feet. This is just a foot chart here that I think I've added. So this corresponds to different parts of the body. So you are able, you yourself, even if you don't go for anyone to do reflexology or you don't have anyone to rub your feet, you yourself can rub your feet and stimulate every part of your body. You can rub and manipulate the tops of your toes and stimulate your head your brain, your ears, your sinuses, all of these different parts, your neck, your throat. You can touch the arch of your foot and really affect your spine, which we know will affect your entire body because there are nerves that correspond throughout the body, or all the nerve endings, right, are meet at the spine. So we can touch different parts of our feet and know that we are affecting healing and relaxation throughout our entire body. Okay, so use this chart, reference this chart, learn different areas for this chart. If you typically have knee pain, or if you typically have constipation, learn the parts of the feet that correspond to the different parts of the body that are maybe challenged or stagnant. If you know that you have sort of a sluggish colon, and even though you go every day, you know, you want to stimulate it a little more, then know that there are different parts of the feet here in the bottom quadrant of your feet that corresponds to your colon, the large intestines, and then your small intestines. You know, if you have lower back pain, it may be your sciatic nerve. So we know that the bottom part of the heel, or sort of the middle of the heel, corresponds to the sciatic area. But really utilize this chart so that you can really create some relaxation in your body. So the next thing I want to mention, and I always kind of get stuck going through quite a few of these, but what I just want to highlight with the flower remedies is that there are flowering trees and shrubs that the essence of these flowers are extracted and used for medicine that balances the emotions, okay? These things, these flowers, these remedies balance the emotions. So we know that we all have a certain number of emotions, right, that we experience every day. We may wake up feeling cheerful, we're happy, we are, you know, ready to face the day. We have joy, we're grateful that we woke up, right? Now we may then go on, start our work, go into our routine, and then we feel a little stressed. Now we're a little irritated, or we're a little angry, or we're feeling sort of a little doomed or gloomy, right? And then we may move through the day and we get past that. And so now we're just sort of mentally fatigued because we've done so much. And, you know, now we're just like, oh my gosh, I don't want to think about another thing, or I don't want to have to do another thing, or now I'm just tired, or now I'm just emotionally drained because a lot of people have pulled from me, asked me a lot of questions, demanded a lot from me. All of these things affect our well-being. And there are many different emotions that we feel. Sometimes it will be that someone angered us, you know, heat us off, ticked us off, got us very upset. So there are a lot of different emotions. Something bad may happen. Someone hurt your feelings and you may be sad. So there are so many emotions that we face each day. Sometimes these are temporary situations, circumstantial, you know, situations just based on something that happened. Sometimes these are emotions that dominate our lives. Sometimes we feel a certain way all the time, and it dominates our being, right? So some of us always feel sad. Some of us always feel angry. Some of us always feel resentful. Some of us always feel like we're afraid and we don't know what's going to happen or what to do at each step or turn or what have you. So these are all situations that we can use flower remedies for, okay? So whether it's something that's temporary or whether it's something that sort of has developed a pattern in our lives, we can use flower remedies to help get us past that point, to help balance out those emotions to where you'll start realizing like, oh, wow, oh, I'm not mad at him anymore. Or, oh, wow, she doesn't make me angry when she does this or says that. But see, one thing for sure, you cannot control anybody else. You can't control what they do to you, say to you, how they make you, well, you can control how they make you feel, but you can't control the actions of other people. But what you can control is your response to them, how it affects you. And sometimes these flower remedies is the answer, okay? So if you read through these, and again, I will not go through each of them, but if you read through these and you feel like, oh, okay, wow, I feel like that a lot, that's the remedy for you, right? Or if you read through these and you say, yeah, usually when I'm at work, this is how I feel. Or on the weekends, when I'm kind of off to myself and I'm not around other people, I kind of feel sad or gloomy. Whatever it is, and only you will know. You know yourself best. And that's why reassessing and reevaluating and self-exploration and evaluation are very important, because you have to be really honest with yourself, right? Because, you know, in all of these things, no one will ever need to know, right? But balancing your emotions, it will change the quality of your life. Even if you have a serious physical illness or condition, right? Or dis-ease, how you view it, how your mind and your emotions are around that illness will still improve the quality of your life, right? And so this is definitely one of those examples of mind over matter, okay? So this is to help you really feel good and know how to manage your feelings and to get your feelings in check, right? So this is what we want to focus on when we're talking about balancing our emotions and using flower remedies for it, okay? So one of the ones that I'll highlight is this one called agrimony, right? We've been staring at it on the page because it's up, right? So this is for people who feel like they have this whole inner torture thing going on, right? They always act like they're fine. They put on that happy face. They act as if things are going well. They're cheerful, but they're really not. They're really suffering internally, suffering in silence. Agrimony is a good remedy for that. These often also are people who, if they are prone to getting a drink to deal with something, these are the people that are prone to alcoholism. Agrimony is a good remedy for this person. Beach is good for the person who's highly critical of others and almost like intolerant of other folk. These are usually people who think that they kind of know it all. You know, they kind of have that arrogance about them. And, you know, nobody else can get it right. They have to do it themselves, that sort of thing. Beach is a good remedy for that type of person. There are some people who have sort of uncontrollable, irrational thoughts. They kind of don't think things as most people do, right? They may have temper tantrums. They may be impulsive. These are folk who may be prone to suicide or having suicidal ideations. They fear losing control. You know, they just have just sort of that really extreme imbalance. They have a fear of going crazy, right? Cherry plum is the remedy for that. One of my favorites, and I always kind of highlight elm. Elm is for people who kind of just temporarily can't do it. I just can't do it today. I usually can do it, but I can't do it today, right? So this might be one of those situational pieces where, you know, you're mentally fatigued, you're tired, you're feeling overwhelmed, and normally you can do it, but you just can't today. You need a little pick-me-up. This is elm. This is the remedy that is for that person. And I love these remedies because a lot of these situations are things that people would usually go smoke a cigarette for or go grab a drink for. And if that's not your thing, or if you want to get out of that being your thing, right? Pick up a flower remedy rather than picking up a drink, right? Because a lot of times it's just all in how you think or how you process something or how you feel about something. And you just need another perspective. Gorse is another favorite of mine. This is basically for the person that's feeling kind of hopeless. They're feeling like, oh, what's the use? What's the point? You know, like I'm just defeated. I'll never win, or I'll never get this job, or I'll never get out of here, or I'll never get the opportunity to go where I want to go or be what I want to be. This is Gorse. This is the person that needs this remedy, and you can completely change your mindset. Impatience, I kind of skipped over that one, but this is one. This is for the person that's just impatient. You know, they're the person, and I say this and I always share this, I am not a patient person. Patience is not one of my virtues. This person usually gets highly irritable. It kind of is the person that kind of needs things done right now. Oh, you can't do it today. Why can't you do it today? Okay, well, can you do it tomorrow? What? Next week? You can't do it till next week. Impatience is for that type of person. This type of person is also prone to have things like hypertension and maybe even heart disease and conditions like that. This is a prime example of how stress can cause physical illnesses. So impatience can bring on physical illnesses because you're kind of always at this heightened state. This is a melodramatic person. They kind of make everything bigger, right? And more, extreme than maybe it has to be. Impatience is the flower remedy for that. I'll skip down because I know, and I don't have this issue anymore, but I certainly have. It was a situational type of thing. And so I think a lot of people go through issues or times of resentment and anger and things of that nature. One of the remedies for that is willow. Willow is for people who have a lot of bitterness and resentment towards a person or a situation. You may feel like, oh, this is not fair. Why is this happening to me? Or you'll have that poor me attitude, right? It could be whatever issue happened between another individual, or it could just be a situation that you're in and you have bitterness, right? Willow is excellent for that. And then the last one I'll point out is walnut. And I think this is a big one because the only constant thing in life is change, right? We've probably all heard that statement before, or that sentiment we've shared before. Everything must change, right? And so we know that we go through different life cycles that cause us to change: puberty, childbearing years, menopause, midlife crisis. But then we also have other things that change in our living situations, our lives. We may move. We may have a relationship change. We may get married. We may get divorced. We may leave school and we go into the workforce. All of these things, all of these changes can cause issues. And usually, again, these are just situational, they're temporary. But in a transition period, this can be very stressful. Walnut is the remedy that will protect you against the harmful effects of changes, transitioning, going through these different life cycles that can be really difficult. So that's what I'd like to highlight with these flower remedies. I don't know that they're accessible in all parts of the world. If you have access to Google and you can find places that do ship them to where you are, great. There are many different brands. Bach is one brand, but there are other brands that you can find, but it's flower essences or flower remedies. And then I mentioned that we would talk about nervine or sedative herbs. So this handout talks about herbs that help us handle stress and relieve anxiety. This handout is usually referring to the use of these herbs in tea form. However, it does not have to be in tea form. If you are just implementing this as a tea that you're using because you like drinking tea, great. If you're looking for a faster, quicker, relief, I have to get a new laptop because this thing does not last as much as it should. And then it'll just cut off if I don't hook it up right away. Okay, well, listen, y'all in here. Oh, the reception in this room is not as good. I was going to show you some of my crystals. I don't know if you can see that very well. Okay, that's some of my crystals. Well, anywho, so we're talking about these herbs. Again, they do not have to be in tea form. They can be in capsule form. They can be in extract or liquid extract form. And then however it's best for you to use them, it's fine. And also it can be hot tea or it can be cold tea if you are a tea drinker and you want to use these in tea form. But some of the ones that I'd love to highlight are hops is a really popular one. I think it's very effective. This is a sedative. This is what's used in beer. Beer is a sedative, but also this is great for allowing nursing mothers to kind of bring down or let down their milk. This is good for people who are having trouble sleeping. You can also put it in a dream pillow with mugwort, lavender, and some other things if you want to induce dreaming, which we know we're in a good sleep if we're dreaming, right? Chamomile, not my favorite, but very popular. Usually I'll add it to other things. You can mix it with hops and it works really well for helping with sleep and just calming the body and the mind. It's also good for a nervous stomach. Kava kava is one of my favorite herbs. This is well known for relieving anxiety or people who are prone to anxiety attacks. And kava kava is excellent for that. It's also great for pain and stiffness in the body due to like anxiety or feeling anxious. Skullcap is another excellent herb as well. This is good for nervous exhaustion. And if your nervous system is just sort of depleted. Good for nervous stomach, good for tremors, restless legs, all of these things. And it's always going to be your best bet to pick a herb that'll do sort of what your primary symptom or your primary condition is, but may also have some other benefits of help in some other areas. And that's the wonderful thing of herbs. And that's usually how I select them. So if it's like, oh, this will help me sleep, but it'll also help settle my stomach. Oh yeah, that's the one I'm choosing, right? Now this thing is hiding my clock and I usually try to keep, oh, I move this over. My little bar is not on the side today. It is at the bottom. And let me try to go here and see if I missed some comments or questions rather. Oh, okay, great. And I didn't see from earlier, someone mentioned they listen to music as a way of relaxing. Thank you for sharing that. Sunday morning football, soccer. Yes, okay. Playing soccer, that's getting some physical activity in. Chatting, talking to sisters are awesome. Relieve stress. Excellent. I'm so glad you all added. Oh, completing a crossword puzzle. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, great. So thank you all for adding to that. And let me now just put in my email. Feel free to email me if you are not part of the WhatsApp group and you need the handout. And here I am still trying to see my clock and I cannot. And of course I walked away and left my phone. But passion flower is another really good herb that's great for calming the body. It's good for anxiety. It's also good for back pain, headaches, gastrointestinal symptoms. Valerian, one of my favorite herbs. I do not suggest drinking this in tea because it has a very strong flavor and odor. If you do, you're going to want to mix it with other herbs, but capsule form is really going to be your best bet here. But this is an excellent herb. It's good for stress. It's good for gastrointestinal issues like IBS or irritable bowel syndrome or diarrhea. But it's good for backaches, headaches. It's great for all different age groups, younger people, pregnant women, senior people. So valerian is one of my favorites for that reason. Linden flowers. So there's just so many. And then at the end here, there's some other foods that are mentioned that are good for relieving stress as well. Okay. And then lastly, the personal care plan. The personal care plan is basically something I came up with. Okay, let me put it on. It's something I came up with to just help you have already printed out, if you're able to print it out, already have a guide for what to do when you're not feeling well. So if you have noted down what you typically eat, what you typically drink, what supplements you may take, or what medicines you may take if you're not feeling well. This is really good for people who have a chronic condition such as asthma or gout or arthritis, something where there's usually a flare up, or there are incidents where, or maybe you have high blood pressure, you know you've been particularly stressed, and you may have to check your pressure, and you're like, oh wow, my pressure's high, let me see what I can do to get that lowered. Or it may be you caring for someone and they're prone to a particular condition. It could be a child that often gets stomach aches, or ear infections, or colds, or flu, whatever. But this just sort of lets you outline what you need to do so that you don't have to think about it. It's as simple as that. You already kind of have the blueprint of what works for you or whoever you're caring for. And it even has, you know, what helps you stay calm. Who do you call for support? When do you go, you know, for further assistance at a doctor's appointment, or an ER, or what have you. So this is just something I included here as well. And then lastly, I said the health plan was last, but really last is the symptom stress checklist. So this is simply for you to assess for yourself whether you are indeed stressed, and in what areas. Is it physical stress? Is it spiritual stress? Is it relationship type stress? Is it emotional stress? Is it mental stress? So this just will give you a good guideline for, especially for those of us who have a hard time realizing that we're stressed. Okay. All right, so I've gone back here. Okay, great. All right, so I'll stop this sharing. And so I appreciate you all joining me or us today. And yes, I know that we have numbers that are kind of waning, and we want to increase our numbers, but I'm always happy for those of us and those of you who are here. So we thank you. But yes, share the information, post it on your social media platforms, you know, so it doesn't have to be just your immediate family or friends, you know, promote what we're doing, advertise what we're doing, you know, bring everyone in so that we can learn about our people and how to organize, and what Pan-Africanism is, and what maintaining good health is, how to heal yourselves, or taking control of your health and your well-being. So I encourage you all to do that, to bring more folk here as we continue to do the stuff that we're doing. And so, yeah, and if you're posting your email, you'll have to email me. So I'm not able to write down emails to send stuff, but if you email me and make a request, and if I have overlooked your email and didn't send what you request, please send me another email and I'll be sure to address that. Sometimes I overlook them. Sometimes I don't get to them right away. Depending on what I'm doing on Saturdays, I'll do it right away. Or Sundays, sometimes I say, oh, I'll get to it Monday, but then the week gets busy. So if you requested something and I haven't sent it to you, just send me another email and request the information. So thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Thank you so much, Nana Akua, for a wonderful lecture.
You're welcome.
On next, we're going to have Dr. Tyreen Wright on today's lecture about Pan-African class. Yes, Dr. Wright, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, I'm here. Okay, so you'll see me momentarily.
All right.
How are you all? How is everyone doing? So this week, we had the two evidentiary, and I'm about to put my camera on now. We had the two evidentiary cases presented for the readings that we will be reviewing. And I wanted to say last week, just to pick up where we left off last week, so that you understand the connection from last week to this week, I wanted to say that what you should have taken away from the session last week was that to come together just for the sake of coming together is not considered Pan-Africanist in nature, okay? And so this week, we will talk about exactly what would be considered Pan-Africanist in nature in terms of action. And that's how we get to the two cases that we're going to be looking at, the African exclusion measure and the Liberian crisis, okay? Which those are our two cases that we're looking at today for this session. I'm going to try to be quick because if you notice, the Liberian crisis case is very long. Okay, it is a very long case, but I'm going to try to approach it from a way where we can get the most out of it in the shortest amount of time, so that to you know, not go over, as I always do, but not to go over to a great extent, okay? That being said, I will be sharing the chapters as we navigate them online in the group right here. For those of you who are not part of, formerly a part of I Love Black People, or formerly a part of the course, okay? So I will share them, even though I have the book on deck and available. So I will go back and forth so that if I do a textual reading, you will be able to actually see that. Okay, so I'm going to share, well, I'm going to open my camera up, and then I'm going to go right to sharing, so that, I don't know if my lighting is that good today, but I will try to improve it. Let's see, because it's sort of dark. Okay, all righty. So let me start with saying hi in person. Okay, there goes my camera. I think everybody can see me now. Yeah, can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, my camera, my little stand is unstable, but okay, I think that works. All right, so first off, so those of you who are not in the group, formally, this is the book that the readings you had this week came from. It's called Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. It's actually a book that I wrote several years ago now. And we covered the two chapters, one on the African exclusion measure, the one and another on the Liberian crisis. Actually, the first one on the Liberian crisis and the second one on the African exclusion measure. And then you had readings from Return to the Source by Amilcar Cabral, where he basically discusses his visit and his message to Africans in the diaspora with regard to the struggle and how we have a common struggle there and abroad. Well, let's say, I'm saying there like I'm on the continent. I'm not on the continent right now, but my heart is. So on the continent and abroad, right, in the diaspora. Okay, so first up, I basically gave you all some context in terms of the readings. I took the quotes out to begin the chapters. And I did this so that you can get some understanding just in an excerpt how Washington was actually thinking. And he had a very unique position. And let me just say this, for those of you who haven't been already a part of this group or I Love Black People and haven't had the other sessions, yes, Washington is not the traditional Pan-Africanist. We do cover Du Bois. I think he was in the last session's readings. However, this is a non-traditional approach to Washington. Basically, research has revealed that he was in action, involved in some Pan-African cases and efforts, such as the Liberian crisis and the African exclusion measure. And so we obviously are acknowledging that, right? So I'm not really doing the very American-centered thing in the sense that we're caught up with the debate between Du Bois and Washington. If you read last week's readings, the week before, you would know from the chapter Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist, that Washington and Du Bois, in fact, did not really have the kind of conflict that people said they had, right? It was sort of a pseudo conflict if you got to the end of that chapter. That has been built on by Westerners, by white scholars, white liberal scholars in particular, and given, have brought life to that conflict, which is normally the case. Our conflicts with each other are not always what they seem, but once Western culture, white supremacy and culture gets a hold of them, they exacerbate our conflicts, right? And just so you all know, when I say exacerbate our conflicts, the first thing I think about is Amilcar Cabral, because we are moving towards next week being able to have the conversation about ethnic differences and diversity, and still waging a struggle against racism and colonialism and imperialism, right? So just so you know, that is on the horizon. It's ahead of us, and we will get to that. But my point is that, so I don't belabor the very American-centered conversation between Du Bois and Washington and the difference in their philosophies, because Du Bois himself actually said there wasn't much difference between him and Washington. And he admits, if you read the chapter from last week's reading, Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist, he admits, I include a quote or two and give context to his essay he wrote on my personal relations with Booker T. Washington and others, where he admits that there was no real programmatic difference between them. He just chose to talk about that because his real difference with Washington and issue with Washington was more of a generational conflict. He had some issues with Washington's measure of power as per his ability to wield the Tuskegee machine and wield power and silence younger scholars. Not younger scholars, but younger activists and individuals who were giving their position and opinion about the plight of African people in the United States and the method in terms of challenging that and challenging rights in this country. So he did not really want to talk about his personal conflict, which was the Tuskegee machine, that Washington could silence any of them if he wanted to. So he chose to talk about pretty much a pseudo conflict, which was a programmatic difference. But we actually know that Du Bois is on the campus of Tuskegee in 1903. So I don't want to go too deep into that because it's not our main objective here. Our main objective here, sorry guys. Our main objective here is to discuss the actual cases and use them as examples of Pan-Africanism, okay? So that we have some model, essentially, of what Pan-Africanism is in terms of action, okay? So let's get to it. I'm going to be sharing the screen, so I'm going to take myself off of camera really quick, but I'm going to share the screen for the text so we can get right into the details of the cases. Okay, so you can still hear me, right? Correct?
Yes, sir, we can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this week's reading, you started out first with chapter 5, which is the Liberian crisis. And then the other readings are the Liberian crisis, the African exclusion measure, and then the return to the source, selected speeches of Amilcar Cabral, connecting the struggles and informal talk with Black Americans. And so we'll start with the first case, which is the Liberian crisis. And I'm going to share the screen. This is a very long, protracted case, right? So really what I'm going to do is only get into the highlights and really the highlights of the case, because it is so long and we don't have enough time to do all of that. but hopefully you read it and you have some understanding of what you read thus far, and I will further expand on that. So let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. And I always like to use my device because it's easier, like right here on hand, but can everyone see this? Chapter 5, the Liberian crisis?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. So this is one of the two cases presented in the book that I showed you. And it is a case that arose in 1907 as a result of the consulate general who was stationed in Liberia, an African American person who contacts Booker T. Washington to say that there is a crisis in Liberia, that the French, the British, and possibly even Germans were threatening to annex territory of Liberia, portions of Liberia's territory. And so he contacts Booker T. Washington and asks for his help. Now, that was very strategic. He knows that Washington's position in American society in a way that he can possibly influence major politicians, even up to the president, in order to advocate for action in terms of Liberia. Now, what Liberia is. So in 1847, an organization called the American Colonization Society decides that it is going to expatriate African people in America who survived slavery back to the continent of Africa. Now, this organization was not necessarily philanthropic. They were very racist. Their motivations were very racist. It even grew out of, to a large extent, the sentiment that Lincoln had, which was that we can play this game, but we will never share power with African people in this country, and that this essentially is a white man's country. And so the American Colonization Society would initiate the establishment of Liberia. Now, I want you all to just side note, pay attention to the fact that in our history, the truth of the matter is that when African people have said they want to expatriate back to the continent of Africa during slavery and after, because 1847, you must understand that slavery is still raging in the United States in particular, but it's on the brink of its own destruction. That being said, when people say that they want to go back to Africa, many people will say that that's crazy, that's horrible, it's, how dare you say, what are you going back to in Africa? The truth of the matter is that the most successful back to Africa movements have been initiated by white people, namely this organization, the American Colonization Society. There is a whole collection at the Library of Congress on that stores the documents and is the archive for the American Colonization Society. And it's full of letters of African people who survived slavery who are saying, I want to be funded to return back to Africa. I'll give up everything I have just to go back to Africa because I'm tired of living in a racist society and living in a society where I can be killed any moment. And so this was a very real thing for many at that time. And it's not like it's not a real thing for us now, right? Racism is very real, and the death toll is very real. So that is part of what was in the American Colonization Society records at the Library of Congress, because it was a reality. That being said, nobody says, how dare you, how crazy, how horrible that you would dare talk about or even entertain returning African people back to Africa. Why? Because this is them saying, we're going to return them back to Africa. Okay. And so they successfully established Liberia and returned numerous African people back to the continent of Africa and established this settlement, this settlement. Can you all see my screen, or did that stop the share? Can you still see my screen? Hello? Can you still see my screen? Can you all still see my screen?
Now we can see it.
You can? Oh, okay. No, all right.
You can't.
All right. So, okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
So my point is just to highlight the irony, and not even the irony, but the hypocrisy. And yeah, my connection is bad, but the hypocrisy.
Yes, it's still
and-
logged in.
Okay, can you see it now?
Let me just check.
Are you back to the librarian crisis?
Yes, we are back on that.
It's back. Okay, good.
Yes.
So, so you know, not even the irony, but the audacity to stereotype or even just to vilify the Back to Africa movements that were initiated by people like Marcus Garvey, Henry McNeill Turner, and people, Bishop Henry McNeill Turner, and others, Blyden and others, who are saying, like, let's go back to Africa. They are criticized, while the American Colonization Society almost is never criticized for its racist motivations in attempting to send African people in the United States back to Africa and do it, not just want to do it, but actually do it. So that's just a notable rebuttal when people say, oh, well, so-and-so want to go back to Africa. Well, guess what? The most actionable and successfully actionable Back to Africa movement was initiated by white Americans. Okay, and their motivations were overtly racist. So that being said, the United States never made very serious claims to Liberia for that reason. It's kind of like, yeah, we'll resettle you, not with a whole bunch of support, no real serious economic ties. But this is a territory in Africa. And if you know anything about World War I is a fight amongst Europeans over the territories of Africa. Okay, and this is approaching that period. 1907 to 1912 is the timeline of this particular case, the Liberian crisis. So the United States is not stating its claim overtly to Liberia. Its focus is on South and Central America, while European focus is on territories in Africa. European nations being colonial imperialist nations, being the French, the British, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, they do a little bit in Africa, but not a whole lot, right? And later on, the Italians. However, the United States is sitting off the coast of Liberia, putting down internal conflicts between the indigenous population and the Americo-Liberian population. Now, this teeters on our issue with ethnic strife and conflict. Interesting that would even be happening, that the United States, of all things, is sitting off the coast to put down these conflicts and continuous clashes. However, is not stating any major claim to Liberia. And I have to answer the question, why? Why isn't the United States stating any claim to Liberia when it is their citizens and an organization from their nation that initiated the establishment of Liberia? The key question then and now is that if the United States does not have economic interest in the region, they do not care to do anything or claim the territory or take any action of any kind, okay? So they are not interested in Africa at the moment because they do not understand the strategic value and the resource value in having their hands in such a nation. Their main thing was just to eliminate a population that they did not want to afford equality to, and that was it. Okay, so we'll sit off the coast and monitor the situation, but that's all we're going to do. We're not going to do anything else. Okay, and so hence you have the Liberian crisis, constant conflict on the ground between the Americo-Liberian population and a constant threat on the in the colony or in the territory itself by the French and British, who are seeking to take the territory and make it their colony, right? Certainly because even though they have, none of them have figured out that that rubber exists in Liberia. Neither of them have figured that out. However, Europe just wants to expand and have territories in Africa, okay? And essentially figure out what resources are there on a vastly resource-rich continent, okay? So Booker T. Washington is contacted about the fact that the French and the British are attempting to seize territories of Liberia. Liberia is constituted as a nation at this moment in time. It is one of only 2 independent African nations on the continent of Africa, the other being Ethiopia. Okay. And so when he is asked to get involved in this situation, he writes, "No one, not even the citizens of Liberia, is more interested in the progress and success of the Republic than I am." And some might say, well, that's far reaching. Well, what he's saying is that he understands that at least the African person, both settler and indigenous, those are culturally are his own people, meaning that he is a child of Africa. Now, if you read The Story of the Negro, you'll know that that book is all about Washington's African origins and feelings about Africa and its children. That being said, he's not simply, and I'll get to it, but he's not simply saying that no one, not even the citizens of Liberia, is more interested because he only identifies with the Americo-Liberian. That's not what he's saying. He certainly identifies with the indigenous Liberian person. And he makes this plain at the end of the case because he talks on behalf of the indigenous Liberian person to emphasize the fact that there is a legitimate issue that the indigenous Liberian person should have with the settler population being Americo-Liberians, Africans who were resettled from the United States by the American Colonization Society. Okay, because of the actions, but let's stay focused. So what happens is he gets involved, he responds, he decides that he is going to use the resources that he has at his disposal with regard to American presidents. And he tries to maneuver in their interests, right? So the setting in 1907 that produced the Liberian crisis was a tension-filled one, both inside and outside Liberia. Threats of encroachment by imperialist nations and debt were persistent. The unlikely variable was Booker T. Washington, skilled in American politics and power broking. He would directly assist negotiations to protect survival of the independent African nation. Realizing the invasion of Liberia by European colonial forces was inevitable without U.S. intervention, Ernest Lyon, the U.S. Minister and Consul General to Liberia, wrote Booker T. Washington on August 10th, 1907. Lyon informed Washington of the intelligence he received, alerting him to the intended annexation of the territory by the British and French. Lyon described the territorial stakes involved in both the British and involved for both the British and the French, and stressed the urgent need for intervention by the U.S. Liberia is located between, so Ernest Lyons wrote this, Liberia is located between 2 formidable powers, each of which is determined that neither shall secure any territorial advantage over the other. England on the Northwest declares that she has no desire for Liberia's territory, but if French encroachments in the Southeast are not checked, she will be obliged for national defense to imitate France on the Northwest, on the Northwest Liberia. Liberia is unable to check France, and unless the United States interferes, the impairment of the independence of Liberia is inevitable. So essentially, you see what the issue is. Both colonial imperialist nations on the ground in Africa are attempting to seize the territory. They are intolerant of any independent African nation. There are only two at this moment in time in 1907, and they are willing and interested in taking this one small territory on the West as well. So I'm going to skip a lot of things and go to the case resolutions just so you can understand that. A lot transpires, but I will say this. Washington is the person that brings the Liberian Commission to the United States. And as a result, negotiations begin privately between Liberia and the United States officials. Now, Washington does something very interesting in that instance. In communicating, if you read the whole case, in communicating with Theodore Roosevelt, whom he was an advisor to, Roosevelt and then Taft, he makes it clear that whatever you do or fail to do with regard to Liberia, please know that it will be remembered when the 4 million, it says Negro, but I'm going to say African people in the United States vote. So he leverages the Black vote, the African vote in the United States, in order to wield power and pressure Theodore Roosevelt, someone who is very familiar with, and Taft, incoming President Taft, to take action on behalf of Liberia's preservation. However, many people historically believe that Washington was against voting or progress, political progress. That's not necessarily the case, because you see him here behind closed doors, using it as leverage against the white American establishment, saying, hey, you don't do the right thing with regard to Liberia. You will not secure your place with us here. So he leverages the Black vote essentially. But that's one of the many things that are very interesting in this case and others behind the scene about Washington. Now, the Liberian Commission to the United States, which is a delegation, they would come and they would spend about a week or two, 1 week in Tuskegee and the other in Washington, D.C., having private meetings that were arranged by Booker T. Washington with Theodore Roosevelt, incumbent Theodore Roosevelt, incumbent President Theodore Roosevelt, and President-elect Taft, because there's a change in administration, and the Secretary of State at the time, Elihu Root. The reason why Washington is doing this, hosting these secret meetings and basically personally chaperoning the Liberian Commission or delegation to the United States, is because he understands that none of these white men who are in power are invested or truly interested in the fate of Liberia. They really truly couldn't care less. So he is attempting to monitor them, to spoon feed them into this situation, to bend them to his will. And so he's trying to secure negotiations so that the change of administration would not derail what would happen in Liberia. Okay, and he has access. So that in essence is what he actually is doing, which is why that quote is written, or that statement is made, that no one, not even the citizens of Liberia, are more interested in the fate of Liberia than I am, because he's saying that he is all in, okay, in securing this. He is unwilling to see the erasure of a whole African nation, namely an African nation that is only one of two independent African nations on the continent, or territories on the continent at this moment in time. He is very adept already and educated on the movements of imperialist nations on the continent of Africa and how they are actively seizing territories. Okay, and so he's not unaware of that. His thing is that he will not allow it to be turned over to them. They will not seize this particular territory. I'm going to skip to the end and just get to Washington's recommendations. His philosophy and his expression of Pan-Africanism is one that stresses independence through industries, owning and operating our own. And he understands that in America, that gives for independent Black communities, industrial and sustainable Black communities. Tuskegee is one, actually. It's one that hasn't been destroyed, if you can understand the history of Tuskegee as a sustainable community. But he believes that independence on the continent of Africa is linked to the owning and operating of industry. Okay, and so much of his recommendations about the sustaining of Liberia has to do with precisely that. Basically, not consuming Western goods and consuming what one produces, him or herself. Okay, he sees that as the key to liberation for the African continent, for African people around the world. Okay, Tuskegee would have 44 industries. And if you remember from last week's lecture, I talk about the International Conference on the Negro, where Washington opens up the 44 industries existing in Tuskegee. Well, he's hoping that those industries and the methods are exported to the African continent everywhere where African people are in mass, so that they can create sustainable environments for themselves. And that is a means of liberation. I'm going to read another quote from another chapter, just so you can see the thinking around this independence through industry form of or method to liberation. This is how Washington believes we are going to eliminate exploitation, right? This is his path to eliminating exploitation, that very value, independence through industry, right? So Booker T. Washington gave his own recommendations, which he communicated directly to Ernest Lyon and President Daniel Howard of Liberia. His advice and recommendation addressed three important areas of Liberian life: education, economics, and the social relations that had been disrupted since the settlement of Americo-Liberians in the country. First, Washington warned President Howard regarding the rift between Liberians and Americo-Liberians. Washington knew that the conflicts between two groups held the potential to destabilize the nation. He suggested that the whole future of Liberia hinges upon its ability to get a hold of the native population. For the tribal Liberian has very real grievances against the minority of Americo-Liberian descendants of deported American slaves who ran the government and controlled the economy. Although African-American, Washington was acutely aware of the inherent injustice involved in resettling formerly enslaved Africans back in Africa, especially as they in turn attempted to colonize Liberia and institutionalize American-style discrimination and policies in their new country. Washington warned that failure to resolve conflicts between the two populations would hinder the nation's growth and threatened its eventual stability. That is very important, significant, because time again, when I teach this, I always have questions about our relationships, right? Meaning that whether it's ethnic conflict and differences on the ground in Africa, or whether that's between the continent and the diaspora, we constantly have issues. Listen, we are our oldest neighbors on the continent of Africa. We have been neighbors, okay, since the beginning of time, right? And that's why it was important for people to watch The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey, so you can get some understanding how long we have been on the earth, right? And human means African. And so we have been neighbors on the continent of Africa since time immemorial, since humanity began. Yes, we are going to have conflict. Now, then you add into it, here are some Africans who were displaced, African people who were displaced and returned to the continent of Africa, exposed to a vile and ravaging form of white supremacy and culture known as racism, and come back to the continent and mimic, okay, this kind of behavior, marginalizing another group of people, coming back home to the continent and employing discriminatory practices. Washington is criticizing this. He's saying that if these conflicts continue, it will be the destruction of the nation. We know, fast forward, that yes, the conflicts in Liberia are rooted in this very moment in history. Okay, this America, so hence the Taylors, hence the monopoly of the power in Liberia by Americo-Liberians, the infiltration of the Liberian state by the United States, right? CIA agents and others, okay, Taylor being one, so he was right. He had tremendous foresight. And so this is why his first recommendation is basically eliminate this issue and foster unity. It is notable to say, though, I want to be very clear, the people who would bring the 13-year war that is rooted in this period and on and on and on and on and on back, the people who would bring the end to the 13-year war, most notably in the nation, would be the women. Okay. If you are unfamiliar with the movement of the women in Liberia, there's a great documentary by PBS. It's called Pray the Devil Back to Hell, where the women of Liberia organized and said, all of the men, every man, you are complicit in the destruction of Liberia because you participate, you sustain the climate that causes this war to continue. And if you do not stop, we will stop it for you because we will go on strike. Yes, sex strike in the home. Okay. And we will take into the streets. And what the women did was engage in a mass unification process across religious and ethnic lines that forced the war to come to an end. It was an amazing phenomenon. It shows you the power in the masses of the people, and certainly African women are in mass in Liberia, as we are in many places in our own communities. And so they wield that power and they bring that to an end. But all of those conflicts, mainly in Liberia, are rooted in this particular period. Okay. And the fact that they did not actually get this conflict. And Washington is not on the side of the American population who had the audacity to survive slavery and then come to Liberia and think. You see this very important point right here? Although African-American Washington was acutely aware of the inherent injustice involved in resettling formerly enslaved Africans back, I should say African people back in Africa, especially as they in turn attempted to colonize Liberia. Very problematic. Okay. Colonization by nature is oppressive. And so what could have been a Pan-Africanist endeavor, the resettling of African people in Liberia, it's not a Pan-Africanist endeavor once the participants began to colonize the indigenous population and marginalize them, right? On the other side of that experience from within the United States, it is a Pan-Africanist dream to return to the continent of Africa. But once back on the continent, to engage in discriminatory, right, exploitative, right, oppressive systems, to employ such systems against the indigenous Liberian person who has never been displaced is not Pan-Africanist. Okay, do you see where we're going? Because it's very important to understand that point, simply because what we're here to do is to qualify our interactions, right? Qualify our actions so that we become analytical enough to understand when we are advancing ideology that is in our best interest and when we are advancing ideology that is against our best interest. That's one of the most profound things that white supremacy and culture and colonization has done to us. Colonization and imperialism has taught us when we are in positions of power to go against our own best interests collectively to advance their interest. So that was the first recommendation by Washington. Second, Washington advised President Howard to develop and implement industrial education programs aimed at stimulating the establishment of industry in the country. Washington had a very shrewd outlook on economic advancement, and regardless of his relations with Western officials, he advised Liberia against the consumption of Western goods. Very important point. Writing to the Liberian Register, he said, every time a Liberian eats a tin can of goods imported from any other country, it means poverty for Liberians. It means that Liberians are paying somebody else to manufacture the tin cans and paying the freight upon the cans. And all this, of course, means money taken out of Liberia. Although Washington has often been cited as pro-capitalist, his inclination was to protect Liberia from the pitfalls of consumption as opposed to production. Conceptually, this belief is consistent with Washington's philosophy of sustainable economic independence, which was essential to developing Liberia as a nation. Essentially, he is talking about independence through industry. Don't consume Western goods. Consume what you produce. Cut them out of the process. And this is how you build and enrich your own nation. You consume what Liberians produce. You do not consume what Liberians grow below their feet, send out to Western nations in raw form, have it put in a can, and then sent back into Liberia for someone else to profit from. Okay, so that is the second and very important recommendation. This concept, which is particular to Washington's expression of Pan-Africanism, an attempt to empower African people to work together to their benefit, right? Once again, Pan-Africanism isn't just simply us working together. We can be working together on a slave plantation, which we have, right? When we work together in our own best interests collectively, that is Pan-Africanist, okay? And third, Washington recommended that Liberia establish an industrial school. Philosophically, Washington subscribed to the view that establishing an industry was an important part of building economic independence, and industrial education would facilitate it. Therefore, Washington and Olivia Phelps Stokes, who I can't speak for because she's a white individual who was possibly problematic in history, but was willing to fund this. In founding the Booker T. Washington Industrial Institute in Liberia, both were deceased by the time the school was actually open. Washington, working with Stokes' support, also put in place a short-term plan to admit Liberian American Liberian students to Tuskegee. Let me just say this about Tuskegee, the institution that Washington did build. It was always a hub for African students, primarily from the Caribbean, Central, South America, and notably from the continent. As early as 1893, you have students from Liberia and from the African continent as a whole coming to Tuskegee. There was always a steady stream of students from the continent coming to Tuskegee. That will make more sense to you in the next case when I talk about the African exclusion measure. Washington is always seeking to have a hand in continental African affairs. He wants to, in his own words, have influence or have an impact, his hand in Africa in some significant way. Not as a colonizer, as someone who would share the methods, essentially tools of liberation, which are rooted in his philosophy, independence through industry, which we know on the continent would manifest as independent African nations, right? The reason why today we are in the situation we're in is because while we are in mass on the African continent, 1.5 to 6 billion people, Europeans, in the form of industry, have us by the neck, okay? They are still mining in Africa, using Africa as an extraction site, okay, and using the people as a resource to extract the material resources, and oppressing and exploiting the people in doing so, right? So the people are being utilized, human resource, right? And the resources itself, material resources, are being exploited and extracted, none to the benefit of the African person. Okay, none of it to the benefit of the African person. So in conclusion, I'm going to read just a basic conclusion. And so I hope, okay, yeah, I could just read that. I don't like to read, but I want to make sure that I get certain points, and I'm not going to leave it a chance that I'm just going to hit every point that I want you guys to get. But in many ways, the findings of this case highlight the uphill battle Booker T. Washington fought. Washington used the crisis of 1907 to get the attention of U.S. political officials who, after many years of American indifference, allowed Liberia to secure a much-needed loan that ended the immediate threat of encroachment. Had it not been for Washington's public involvement, as well as his close personal relationship with President Roosevelt, the U.S. may not have assisted Liberia at all. Like the case that follows, there is a moment where Washington had to make a decision regarding common interests. Washington's response to the request for help could have been met with a resounding no. However, not only did he agree with the existence of Liberia, but he identified with both the Americo-Liberian population as well as the native Liberian population. Had he decided against aggressively negotiating on behalf of Liberia, the outcome would have been different. Washington's presence and activity in this particular case was the only unique variable in the Liberian crisis of 1908-1909. U.S. officials and presidents had obviously intervened in Liberia, but when the U.S. was asked to act officially, legislators have historically refused to make any significant commitment to the country. And the reason why is, like I said, no strategic economic interest in the nation, had not figured out how to exploit Liberia. And so if any of you understand the United States, they're not going anywhere where they can't exploit the economy or the resources. And so they are not stating claims. By the end of this case, though, the United States has figured out how it can exploit Liberia. And so you have, this case really is evidence of not the best scenario, but a live to fight another day scenario, meaning the existence of Liberia is under threat, right? And so Washington is faced with the choice or the challenge of preserving the territory as a nation, or it actually being taken and erased. And we know this is like the case all over the African continent. This is similar to the Ethiopian Eritrean issue, where the Italians seize a territory, and then that territory never really comes back into the full nation, right? Eritrea, as somebody may know, was part of Ethiopia. It's seized by the Italians upon its liberation, becomes its own nation. Well, the idea here is that the European imperialist nations, British and French, would seize the territory and it would never come back. It would never return to the hands of the people. It would just be a European territory until they fought their own war for independence, if at all, right? So this is certainly a case of a live to fight another day. We're talking about the fate of a nation at this moment in time, whether it will exist or cease to exist. So that's why it's important to understand that this case wasn't, I'm critical of, I give criticism in here of the negotiations and even the outcome. However, it is certainly not the best deal, but the only deal going, right? When you're talking about whether or not Liberia will survive at all, right? Not just one colonial nation seizing to annex it, but two. And with a third hanging in the wings, because certainly the Germans are very much interested in territories in West Africa as well, as because they are already there in Togo, not far away. So the details of the case are direct evidence of Washington's contribution to African policy. His intention to protect Liberia from foreign encroachment is evident through his correspondence with President Theodore Roosevelt, Secretary of War, and later President William Taft, and Secretary of State Elihu Root. Ernest Lyon, who chose Booker T. Washington in particular due to his influence in political circles and established advisory role in to several U.S. presidents. Although Washington was neither a U.S. nor a Liberian official, all parties involved acknowledged that he was a key negotiator and advisor and wielded considerable influence and power in the U.S. and internationally. Through his ongoing rapport with Roosevelt and later Taft, he was able to secure U.S. commitments that had significant strategic value to Liberia and helped maintain the country's stability. Washington directly influenced every aspect of the case: diplomacy, actual negotiations, advisement, fundraising, and recommendations. It is very likely that without his intervention, both French and British forces would have annexed Liberia on this particular occasion. However, conclusively, what should be highlighted here is that as soon as Liberia was secure, Washington attempted to transport his philosophy of self-help. His recommendations were based on the Tuskegee model to own and operate industry and to eliminate the dependency basically on Western nations. The interpretive aspects of the case highlight that the historical relationship between the U.S. and Liberia was traditionally undefined. The U.S. as a stakeholder in the case viewed Liberia as an informal territory. The British and French, who had strategically desired to annex Liberia, viewed the new nation as an uncolonized territory in Africa. If gone unclaimed, would be absorbed by both colonial powers. American Liberians, to a large degree, viewed the nation as a colony of the U.S., although this relationship was repeatedly called into question. In addition, as a key stakeholder due to his role in the negotiations and spokesperson, Washington viewed Liberia as one of the only two free African nations on the continent of Africa. This is actually the Liberian Commission to the United States. The gentleman in the middle row, right, seated, are Liberian officials from Liberia visiting Tuskegee. This is in a garden at Tuskegee Institute at the time. Okay, there you see Booker T. Washington. I'll read it. The Liberian Commission to the U.S. hosted in Tuskegee by Booker T. Washington. Standing left or right, Charles Branch, Secretary of Rep of Liberian Commission. Okay, to the left. Booker T. Washington in the middle. Charles Anderson, Collector of the Internal Revenue, is to Booker T. Washington's right. And then seated, Charles Dunbar, G.H. Gibson, former president of Liberia, and J.J. Dawson, former vice president of Liberia. That's them sitting seated. Okay. And this is evidence of the fact that Washington brought this commission to Tuskegee and is the one who hosted these secret meetings in Washington, D.C. But the point of it all is just the preservation of Liberia. What would one do in order to preserve and allow for the continuation of an independent African nation, which we know that is what Liberia is. Maybe a little beaten and bruised, both internally and externally. However, surviving. Okay. And so when we weigh and measure what the outcomes could have been, the certain outcome could have been the loss of Liberia to Western nations, it becoming a imperial territory or colonial territory of either the French or the British, or both portions of it, right? We know that the imperialists have no problem cutting lines through Africa. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm just going to check the time. Can I get a time check real quick? Because I can't see the time. Okay, great, Peter. All right, thank you. Okay, I don't know, but I've been read. All right. Okay. All right, so I'm just looking at the comments really quickly. Okay, so then the next case is the African exclusion measure. Do I still have a share? No, right?
Yes, you're not sharing, but you still have permission to share.
Okay, perfect. So the next case that we cover here is a very short case. It's called the African exclusion measure. And do you have the time? Do you have
Yes,
the time?
yes, it's now 12:42.
Okay, so I'm gonna do this really, really quickly because I don't want to skip this.
Okay.
Screen. Okay, so the librarian crisis is such a long case. Okay, so here we go. The African exclusion measure. And this is chapter 6 in the book. Through your newspaper, I desire to appeal to the American Congress and to the people of the United States in favor of fair play and justice in connection with the immigration bill now pending before the United States Senate, which by amendment excludes from coming to this country any person of African descent. So basically, the U.S. Senate in 1914, the last day of the year, December 31st, 1914, passed some legislation that was attached to the larger immigration bill, saying exclude anyone of the Black or African race from the United States now and forever. Their motivation in doing this, besides just being racist, to be quite frank, was that the Panama Canal had just recently been completed. And the laborers on the Panama Canal were the African and Black population of the Caribbean, Central and South America. Once the canal was completed, US officials, because that endeavor, that engineering endeavor was basically an American endeavor. They had their US military persons on the canal down in Panama, and they executed it. This desire to create a canal or cut across landmass to open up the waterways so people could travel from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean without having going all the way around large continental masses, be it the United States, well, the continental United States, North and South. This has been attempted before by the French. The Americans under the Theodore Roosevelt would actually do this for the first time. And it would make the United States shoot to the top of the list in terms of world superpowers, because now they can open up and trade, right, between the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans, okay, and to open up all of the Eastern world to them. That being said, the laborers that would produce this would be African people and Black people, okay? And once it was completed, the United States would essentially say to the populations that labored on the Panama Canal, thank you for your labor, but no on the question of expatriation. No on the question of immigration, okay? Not even expatriation, immigration. They wanted to make that clear. We want your labor, we do not want you, right? Just let's be very clear about America in particular. America is an expression of white nationalism. This is part of why so many people have problems today, because they don't really understand what the nation is about, this particular nation called the United States. It has always been an expression of white male nationalism from its founding. And so, there's never a time in history where they are welcoming of other groups of people, except for as a cheap source of labor. Okay. Um, I could go further. I need to do a whole sitting on that issue with regard to Africans in the diaspora, really, so that we can adequately understand the position of the nation that we actually live in. That being said, it was a senator out of Missouri named James Reed who injected this line in the Senate bill and said, exclude anyone of the African or Black race. Without debate, this measure passed and it would be inducted into policy in terms of the larger immigration bill in the first week of January 1915, had it gotten approved by the Congress. So it went from the Senate. It originated in the Senate and was going to the Congress. It is around that time that Booker T. Washington learns of this, and he is incensed by it. He knows what this means. That means that his steady flow of students that come to Tuskegee and are his main means of exporting the Tuskegee model back to Africa, and that movement of African people around the world, inclusive of the United States, would be curtailed by this immigration bill because it would on site exclude anyone who looked Black and was African on site. And this is the humdinger. This would be also, in terms of legislation, the denial, the exclusion would put those African and Black people who attempted to enter the United States in the same category as undesirables and criminals attempting to enter the United States. And yes, let me state that again. The denial of being Black or African, so the basis upon which the US government sought to deny entry of persons on the fact that they are Black and the fact that they are African, and for me, that's one and the same. However, when we're talking about the Caribbean, Central, South America, I'm sure many of you know there is some issue of identity, okay, in terms of how people are physiologically and how they identify, right? So still struggling with Blackness today. Definitely haven't even embarked on the African identity struggle, meaning primary identity being Africa. However, it doesn't change the fact that that is who they are. So the point is that this would be one of the earliest moments in history where we see a criminalization of Blackness and African people, okay? That African and Black also means criminal and undesirable. That's what this measure would do. We'll place the people attempting to enter the United States in the same category as criminals and undesirables. So basically, the Panama Canal, in the first couple of pages, I break down what the Panama Canal is, what happens on the canal, and how this would take place. The Senate discussion drew correlation between literacy and African populations' values and the possibility of cultural assimilation. Other senators spoke for and against the amendment to the immigration bill. However, no aggressive struggle ensued. The Senate adopted the second, more specific line to exclude all members of the African or Black race from the U.S., passing with 29 yeas and 25 nays. The amendment, which would otherwise have gone unnoticed, was due to go to Congress within a week. Washington, who regularly read the congressional record, communicated with officials stationed on the site of the Panama Canal. He quickly educated himself on the clause and wrote an article challenging the stipulation, which he sent to several editors for publication. The article was published in New York, the New York World, on January 2nd, 1915, under the title Fair Play for Negro Aliens. Booker T. Washington argued that the amendment was in fact unnecessary and a slight to the masses of African Americans residing in the Southern U.S. The article began with the appeal to Congress and American citizens. Through your newspaper, I desire to appeal to the American Congress and the people of the United States in fair play and justice in connection with the immigration bill now pending before the United States Senate, which he should have wrote Congress because it already passed in the Senate, which by amendment excludes from coming into this country any person of African descent. And so he basically uses his Tuskegee machine, this sophisticated network of power brokers, to go into Congress, challenge American politicians, and consequently stop them from passing this measure, which would be the law of the land. This measure would have impacted anyone coming into the United States from 1915 on. And so I'm going to stop there, but it would have impacted, because I was trying to find the list of people, the nations that it would have impacted. Okay, good. Here we go right here. So the case, Washington used a three-pronged attack on this particular issue. He attacked it in the press. He outed them, saying this is what the Senate has done. An exclusionary measure to lock out anyone who was Black or African from coming into the United States from 1915 on. Then he organized, not even organized, but he called his lieutenants of the Tuskegee Machine, which was his network of power brokers. Just FYI, this network is the same network that Du Bois has a problem with him about, but here you see them being put into action to challenge a racist measure, an immigration bill. They are a secret network. To this day, I don't know that we know all the members of the Tuskegee Machine, but they were power brokers, and they would go into certain settings and wield and negotiate and do a number of things in order to, produce certain outcomes. Some people would say it was sort of like a little mafia, in the sense that Washington repeatedly used this secret network to change the outcomes in any given situation, usually in favor of most African people. Okay. The other way he challenges it is also he gets his words on the floor of the House, because he still has a great deal of influence amongst American politicians. And so a congressman from New York actually gets Washington's words on the floor of the House, certainly revealing how this is going to impact struggling Black and African nations around the world. But more importantly, the last and final thing he does is his secret network actually goes to Congress, is present there, and challenges American politicians by holding up the Congress and forcing a polling of the Congress so that they can know exactly who has the potential to affirm and vote in favor of such a measure. He was intolerant of the idea that this was going to survive. He only had 1 week from January 1st to 7th to maneuver. He did not have to figure out who the United States was talking about. See, this is where the consciousness and the ideological training comes in at. When the United States, anyone of the Black or African race, if he did not understand that the inhabitants of the Caribbean, Central, and South America were in fact African, and yes, therefore Black, he would have had to spend a whole decade trying to figure out who they were talking about. He did not. He knew who they were talking about, and he sprung right into action. If we had this issue right now, this very likely would pass, because I don't know that we are so clear on the identity piece as he was. Okay. That being said, he had the mechanisms already in place to take such action: his secret network, his control of the Black press, and his ability to negotiate and influence people. And so it is that three-pronged attack that forces a holdup in the Congress, and therefore a defeat of the measure ultimately. That being said, Washington is seeking to secure his steady flow of students from the African continent, because he knows that that is a direct link to the continent and a direct link to our dialectical relationship, sharing between the US and the continent of Africa and everywhere we are in mass. So I'm just going to read the conclusion in brief and leave it there. The case of the African exclusion measure contrasts the Liberian crisis due to its brief timeline and Washington's very direct opposition to U.S. immigration policies. His efforts in the case exemplify his natural inclination to address issues facing African people abroad as well as within the U.S. There were no conflicting loyalties in this particular case. Washington took to the press and the people, publicly condemning the bill as unjust and wrongfully aimed at African people from the Caribbean, Central, and South America, but an overt affront to the masses of African Americans within the U.S. as well. He worked behind the scenes as well, directly attempting to persuade and challenge those expected to vote on the bill. Washington's ability to influence and affect the outcome of the case in an exceptionally short amount of time was telling. Several African-American leaders in the U.S. publicly opposed the measure. However, Washington wielded a level of unconstituted power that facilitated the bill's repeal through a vigorous and well-organized campaign. The case conclusively recounted Washington's efforts to curtail discriminatory and racist policies directed at African people internationally. Although the amendment specified anyone of the African or Black race, the targeted populations were African people from the Caribbean, Central, South America, who largely identified by nationality Jamaican, Costa Rican, Panamanian, Trinidadian, etc. However, this did not confuse Washington, who to a large degree understood the scattering of African people abroad due to enslavement. Regardless of the various identities and nationalities, the targeted populations assumed Washington's Pan-African consciousness and understanding of their historical context allowed him to act on their behalf. He accurately identified the targeted population as African people and opposed the measure. International students and faculty, which were aware of the amendment and its defeat, wrote Booker T. Washington and thanked him for his efforts. Few doubted that Washington's moral suasion and direct pressure brought upon the congressman through his lieutenants fostered the defeat of the amendment. It was during his fight against the African exclusion measure that Washington challenged U.S. political representatives in defense of African people abroad for the first time. In the previous case of the Liberian crisis, Washington was responsible for private negotiations and keeping Liberia on the agenda in political circles. Here, he openly and vocally challenged the adoption of language that emerged in the immigration bill. The language of the bill would change how U.S. policies regulated or eliminated the immigration of African persons into the United States. This is just a procession of Washington's funeral because the case took place in January of 1915 and he would die in November of 1915. That being said, had this measure failed to be defeated by Washington, Marcus Garvey would not have been allowed into the United States just shortly thereafter, the very next year. And Marcus Garvey was attempting to come to the United States on the basis of an invitation by Booker T. Washington to come see Tuskegee and all its industries as a result of the attendance of 8 Jamaican scholars or teachers from Jamaica attending the International Conference on the Negro. So that being said, this case is very important because let's just think about it. Marcus Garvey never arrives in the United States because he's turned away based on this, had this bill passed. There is no, for those of you who like him, there is no Barack Obama in the United States because his father would never. So 1915 on, that was 106 years ago. So is that right? Yeah, 107 years ago. So the point is that no Barack Obama, not even a Malcolm X, because his mother's parents are descendant from the Caribbean. On and on and on and on and on. No Colin Powell. I don't know if that's good or bad, but no Colin Powell in the United States. No Nkrumah coming into the United States to go to college. No Nnamdi Azikiwe coming to the United States to attend college and returning, engaging in the liberation struggles on the African continent. No actively dialectical relationship being able to go back and forth between the continent and the United States. And so this would change U.S. immigration policy with regard to African people from that moment onward. Was it Pan-Africanist? Absolutely. What is Washington doing? He's fighting for the freedom of African people to move around the globe, inclusive of the United States, in and out of the United States by African and Black people, period. When it is Pan-Africanist and there should be a ability to concretely identify what the benefits are, right? There should be no question about the benefits, right? So going back to what I said last week, if I hold a house party at my house and we all get together, if I can't say what came of it, then it is not Pan-Africanist. It is the unity of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation. Certainly, this case is an example of that. Washington is moving in concert with his network on behalf of African people collectively, globally, okay? Regardless of their ideological ideas about who they are even, right? Because like I said, people in the Caribbean, Central and South America have primacy on their national identities, right? So identify by nationality first. And there are numerous struggles to move towards identifying as Black, but that is not complete, right? So the South America and certain places in the Caribbean have not had a Black power movement where Blackness is affirmed and there's a positive intellectual transformation around Blackness, right? Although they are Black and certainly identifiably African and very culturally African still, okay? That being said, Washington didn't have to get those lessons because he already had Pan-African nationalist or Pan-African consciousness, okay? Had he had to work on that with himself first, then he would have failed to act and this measure would have passed in those 7 days, okay? And that was not the case. So I wanna leave you with those two cases. We'll get to the text of Amilcar Cabral, because of course I'm over, I can go on. I'm working on trying to, just be more succinct about these cases, but there are some important details that you should know because you do need to we are here to sharpen our analytical tools around what is Pan-Africanist or not, right? And what is to our benefit and how to qualify that and how to assess that, whether it is in industry or whether it is with regard to nation management and the existence of our nations. We need to be able to qualify what legislation is to our benefit, what policies are to our benefit, and when they are not, and who are the agents and the actors, right? Because one of the things we suffer from around the world is this whole neo-colonial kind of paradigm where we have many people who look like us and do not advance our best interests or work on our behalf. And we are wooed in by the imagery, right? That's whether it's in the United States or on the continent of Africa, right? We have leadership who are there to create policies and legislation and act on our behalf and don't do that. But we are caught up with the aesthetic, the imagery, and that does not work to our benefit in the long run, ultimately. I'm gonna leave you all with that. I'm gonna look at any questions. Okay, good. I don't see a lot of comments, so I think you guys are able to digest what I said. Once again, it's always a pleasure, and I am gonna wrap it up here. I know some people, okay, well, we're not doing too bad. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. And I will, please let these lectures. I don't see the whole comment, but so you can actually go back. Yes, they are recorded, so you can actually go back and yeah, so if you're in the group, you can actually go back to I think it's the Facebook broadcast and see the whole lecture. And we don't repost them in the group, but ask the administrator how to go to the Facebook group. Because I think you can, if you're part of Isle of Black People, I don't know if it's in general, if it's available for people who are not in the Isle of Black People group.
Yes,
And,
it's general. Let me just share with them the link.
Okay, so you can go back, but I don't actually repost it in the group. But you can go back to it on Facebook and actually see the whole lecture. Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you for putting up your time, offering your time to this endeavor that we are involved in. And hopefully, I hope everyone, the next time I'll ask, in terms of feedback, are people following, right? Because I am moving fast, and those cases that we covered, one of them is very, very, very dense. So, it's a lot of material in a short amount of time. We will pick up with this week's readings going out on Monday promptly, and I'll be adding to my lecture just the piece on Amilcar Cabral, right? As he connects with Africans in the diaspora. And there's more conversation to come around ethnic and cultural differences, and how do we unify in spite of that, right? So I'm gonna end there because I certainly could go on all day. I'm gonna say I am because we are, and be safe, everyone, okay? Peace.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Dr. Tarin Wright, for a wonderful lecture. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy it.
Yes.
I know that side is still during the day. Here it's around 8 p.m.
It's 8 p.m. where you are. Okay. So
yeah.
Yes, it's still morning here.
All right.
It's still high noon.
All right. I would like to thank Mr. Muhammad, Anna Wanyama, Brian Parks, David, Eric, Jonah, Thomas, Esther, and Joel K. Kendichi, John Jones, Keenan Palmas, Keisha Lewis, Larry, Leonard King, Morgan Moss Jr., Almami Bagasango. We appreciate all of you guys who've been with us till the end of the lecture. Hopefully we'll be together again next week. Thank you all. I am because we are.
Okay.
I've shared the link for Facebook on the chat section, and also for those who are not in our Pan-African class, I've shared the waiting list. You are all free to join and invite your friends and family. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.